Hello everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Magro. I'm one of the product managers at Atlassian responsible for our data center products. I'm going to give you an update on our investments into our enterprise products today, specifically that of our data center offering. And you can thank me for bringing the Sydney weather to Germany, to Stuttgart over the past 2 days. It's been very hot. The summer Sydney weather. A quick show of hands here. Raise your hand if you have at least one person in your organization dedicated to running the Atlassian products. Right? 40% of you or so. These guys in your admin teams are one of the biggest sources of inspiration for us and our teams as we continue to scale our products. So for many of you, your product started in your teams. Someone in development, or maybe product management, maybe the IT organization, installed JIRA or CONFLUENCE or Bitbucket, one of our products, and you're up and away. You're opening tickets, creating pages, raising pull requests. And so what happened next? As your deployment grows in size, it gets really big. And then everything slows down, right? So how's this really played out for our biggest customers at Atlassian? For JIRA software, the growth in issue count over the last 2 years for our 10 biggest instances has been over 55%. For CONFLUENCE, there are over 50% more pages in our 10 largest instances. And for Bitbucket, we've seen a 65% increase in the number of repositories in our 10 biggest deployments. We're really not seeing a slowdown in growth whatsoever. Customers like you are looking to accomplish more with our products than ever before. So most of you here today are probably from an enterprise. You've probably experienced this crazy rate of growth and adoption of our products internally. And usually when people think about enterprises, they might think slow moving or complex. But we see a collection of teams that are enabled to scale. We see teams of teams, or a team of teams. If you want to innovate at scale and grow with confidence, while still maintaining the right level of control over your instance, and really we're on this journey with you. Today we're going to look at 3 main areas of investment in our data center products. The first is looking into what we're doing to improve your team's productivity. Secondly, we're looking at what we're doing around admins and enabling their ability to scale and support your teams. And lastly, looking into what we're doing around helping your team scale your infrastructure. Let's start with the first area of investment, team productivity. We get a lot of feedback at Atlassian. We get it from in-product analytics, from customer interviews, through our support channels, from the community, public forums such as this. Really, it's kind of overwhelming at times. How many of you here have visited jira.atlassian.com, or Jack, as we like to call it? Sure. Cool. Same. Looks to be the same as the admins in the audience, so maybe there's an overlap there. This is really our #1 source of input for how we make your teams more productive. Over the past few years, we've delivered a combined 40,000 votes, and as we get bigger, we need to keep improving on these processes of managing jira.atlassian.com and how we handle suggestions from the community. So about a year ago, we revamped the JAP workflow so that we could be a lot more transparent about what we were doing, what was included in our roadmap, and help you guys plan for what's going to be picked up and what's not going to be picked up. So how are we doing? Looking at the top 40 suggestions in the JIRA software project over the last couple of years, we've addressed 16 of them. So 40% of them we've delivered into the products. Another 16 are under consideration, so the teams are looking at the possibility of doing these in the future. And all the others are clearly classified. For us, it's really important for us to communicate to you with a clear explanation of why we are doing something or why we're not doing something, and what some possible alternatives are for you, so that you can plan better in your instances. Let's talk a little bit about our platform releases. This is really how we drive our future product innovations at Atlassian. These releases give us an opportunity to make bigger platform changes so that we can support your needs of tomorrow. Let's look at 5 of our platform releases across all of our products, and what we've been doing to improve your team's productivity. Let's start with the big one, JIRA software. And the next major version of JIRA software really lays the foundations for those of you who plan to manage JIRA in your own data centers on cloud infrastructure like AWS and Azure. The 8.0 release focuses on critical platform improvements to help your teams move work forward faster. These updates will also help our JIRA administrators do their job more effectively. In 8.0, we delivered performance improvements that make your teams faster. We've upgraded Lucene, which is the JIRA subsystem search engine, and made reindexing a whole lot faster. The average index size is actually now halved, so it's a lot smaller as well. This is going to save you guys a bunch of time, admins, when you're reindexing your instance. What used to take us in our internal tests over 3 hours, closer to 4 hours, now takes less than 1. So I'm pretty happy with that improvement. Who uses agile boards? Yeah, a lot of people. We've shaved seconds and in some cases minutes off the loading of agile boards. In JIRA 8.0, agile boards and backlogs now load in under 4 seconds for 90% of our customers. So they're incredibly fast. And lastly, we've improved email notifications. For our enterprise customers, JIRA is very talkative. One of our enterprise customers shared that their environment sends nearly 50,000 emails a day. So in 8.0, we introduced batch notifications. This allows JIRA to send notification groups for any changes that have happened within 10 minutes of each other. So now instead of getting 20 different updates as someone edits each different field on a JIRA issue, you now get one with all the information you need. And we're super excited to announce the native JIRA server app. We've taken a lot of the learnings from our CONFLUENCE server and Android and iOS apps, such as the unique sign-in flow for our self-managed products, and we're bringing it to the brand new JIRA Server mobile application. With push notifications, you can really stay in the loop on the go. You can track your progress by viewing issues, you can look at the issue details, you can progress any work by liking or commenting and mentioning on the issues, and you can really do this anytime, anywhere with the JIRA Server mobile app. Currently, the JIRA Server mobile app is in beta today. If you go to atlassian.jira.com/jira-server-mobile, you can try this out in beta, and it's likely to be in GA very, very soon. So accessible for everyone that doesn't want to try that in beta. When it comes to planning work and aligning on a strategic vision, for many teams, this starts with a roadmap created in Portfolio for JIRA. That's why we're excited to talk you through the Portfolio 3.0 release. In this release, we're making it easier to plan across teams of teams by introducing a new planning experience that lets your teams create a realistic data-driven roadmap. In addition to a total UI refresh, your teams will be able to do things like quickly identify dependencies between interrelated issues, simply dragging and dropping, and manually making changes to the timeline. Team members will also be able to reassign individual issues to avoid bottlenecks and account for changes in your roadmap as things evolve. To finish off the JIRA announcements, we'll talk a little bit about JIRA Service Desk, which is built on the powerful JIRA platform, meaning that our JIRA Service Desk 4.0 release reaps all the benefit that we talked about in relation to the JIRA 8.0 release. For agents and their customers, we believe there is a leaner way to do IT service management. Our focus is covering off essential capabilities needed to increase speed and efficiency of service delivery to your customers. In JIRA 4.0, you'll see notably faster performance that will help your service teams be more productive and experience fewer roadblocks. Our project creation is 6 times faster, so you'll be able to create projects super easily. And we're pretty excited to announce that Atlassian was recognized as a strong performer in the first Forrester Wave for enterprise service management in 2018. We were the highest ranked ESM vendor based on our agile approach to helping your teams deliver outstanding employee experience for service across the organization using JSD Service Desk. Let's move on to Bitbucket, the Git solution that helps you build software at scale. In Bitbucket 6.0, we delivered Code Insights, which is a better way to gain insights for progressively improving your code quality. The Code Insights API allows your developers to integrate their favorite tools to surface build test results, security scans, and even more within the pull request itself. And last but not least, Confluence. At Atlassian, Confluence is our content collaboration solution, and I'm sure it is for many of you guys here as well. When our team creates a document or provides feedback or iterates on work, it's all happening in Confluence. And maintaining a constant flow in Confluence is critical to our communication. In 7.0, we continue to build off the foundations of Confluence, the existing features in the platform, so that teams can move work forward quickly. We're delivering improvements to the editor to address over 50 of your tickets, looking at bugs and UI improvements so that your teams can work faster. Not to mention, we've completely redesigned the search experience. This helps you surface recent work more quickly. It makes it simpler to filter search results by maybe the space you're looking for, the contributor, any labels, the type of content, the date, and we're making a whole bunch of under-the-hood improvements to speed. Now, before I move on to our next topic around scaling our products, many of you use apps that are provided by the app vendors here in this room today to extend the capabilities of our products. And when we look into the data for apps, the average DC customer is running at least 10 plus apps in production. And as the product scales, the apps need to scale with you. And about 9 months ago, we introduced a new class of app into the marketplace, data center approved apps. The app submission process includes, first and foremost, an architectural review. So we, with the vendor, review the app to make sure it's built with best practice in mind. How does it use caching? How does it use locking? How does it use memory? What are the security profiles for the application, etc. Then the vendor is required to test the application, response times, and the performance of the application at scale. So in both a 1, 2, and 4 node DC cluster, we look at the response times across those as the instance gets bigger. Only once that's done is the app approved for sale on the marketplace. We're really continuing to invest in the ecosystem to deliver a higher class of app for your DC environment. We're pretty excited to announce that when we look at the data for the DC apps program to date, we see that DC approved apps have about 18% less critical support issues when compared to non-approved apps. Happy with the progress, but there's like a whole lot more for us to do in this area. Really, we want apps to help your teams be more productive and provide you performance and stability that your organization demands. To summarize, we continue to invest in making your teams more productive. Our platform releases across JIRA and CONFLUENCE, Bitbucket, Service Desk, give us an opportunity to make bigger platform changes for you. And we draw a lot of the inspiration from the great suggestions that you provide us through Jack. The second area of investment is really around scaling our products. While we're always looking at the kind of top voted issues on Jack, we pay particular attention to the ones that impact your products at scale. For instance, in Bitbucket, as the number of repos and plans your team use increases, applying the right settings and policies consistently across all the repos and plans can be a ton of overhead. That's why we introduced project level settings for Bitbucket and Bamboo this year. You can now set up a policy, for example, verifying the committer before a pull request gets merged. You can do it once at a project level and have it apply to all the repos within that project. Another area we're investing to help our admin scale is in crowd. Customers are already using Crowd for a centralized user and identity management across all of their Atlassian applications. But we know admins spend a lot more time managing group permissions and things like that. So recently we released Delegated Admin. Now, as a global admin, you can delegate the management of a group so that the people within that group can actually add and remove users. And so they can manage their team or their group. But global admins still have the right of oversight. With Crowd's improved audit log. In Crowd, admins can identify who or when changes are made so they can meet all their compliance needs within that group. And we're also excited to deliver cross-domain SSO for Crowd, making it easier to set up SSO across all of your Atlassian products. Another aspect of scaling our products is dealing with JIRA's growing project and issue count. As your instance matures, your old projects from years ago, they stick around. And these old projects not only clutter up the interface, but they use up the precious resources within the instance. Resources that will be better directed to work that is still current. That's why we introduced project archiving for JIRA Software Data Center and JIRA Service Desk Data Center. Project archiving is a native archiving solution that helps teams remove unnecessary projects from JIRA safely. First of all, we added a quick filter and into the admin projects list. You have information like issue count. You can see the date that the last issue was updated, so that you can make a decision on whether a project should be archived or not. Archiving a project is just 2 clicks away, and those projects will appear in a separate list of archived projects. From here, you can easily restore a project if you ever need to. In our performance tests with 1 million issues, if we archive 50% of the projects, we saw an 11% increase in the loading of JIRA boards and a 25% increase in all the JQL searches. And this really, this performance improvements, they grow linearly. So as you archive more data on more projects, the performance improves. And really, we don't think we're done with archiving. We know that there's some projects where you just can't archive the whole project, especially for those kind of longer running service desk projects. And so we are introducing for both JIRA Software and JIRA Service Desk DC, a new way of archiving issues. No need to close the entire project. You're able to actually archive just a portion of the issues within one project, reaping those performance benefits we talked about earlier. In addition to issues, seasoned admins will tell you another feature that has a really big impact on index size and performance is the sheer number of custom fields that you have with a global context. Custom fields are added to JIRA with a global context by default, and most of us really just go with the default setting when we add it. But when we actually look into the instance, there are only a small number of projects that are actually using those custom fields. To address this issue, we've introduced a new capability into JIRA Software Data Center and JIRA Service Desk Data Center called the Custom Field Optimizer. Now admins can run a scan to identify the custom fields that are using a global context. And it's quite possible the admins will find a lot of custom fields that are not being used by any project at all. So they're on the system, using up resources, but are not being used in any project anymore. And these are really great candidates for a change of context. By reducing the overall number of custom fields with a global context, means shorter time for re-indexing and a boost to overall JIRA performance. To summarize, we're investing in simplifying your admin team's lives so that they can focus their time on supporting the growth of your team of teams without becoming a bottleneck for your organization. Lastly, as your deployment grows, upgrades become more complex, the resiliency of the underlying infrastructure becomes even more critical, and there's a greater need for tools and guidance to support your environment. We experienced this ourselves, even at Atlassian. We're recently talking to a large bank in Europe that had a separate instance of Bitbucket for their technology team and then a separate instance for their capital markets team. It really meant double the effort to manage both of those instances, and for them it really made sense to consolidate the instances centrally. For those of you that know Git, moving Git repos is relatively easy, but the hard part is gracefully handling, the pull requests, the comments, the permissions. Addressing this has been a real focus for the Bitbucket team, and then there'll be a built-in capability that migrates repositories from multiple Bitbucket server instances to the data center instance, while preserving all of that metadata, the user timestamps, etc., from that existing project. Downtime. Who likes downtime? No one. Okay, good. This is why we introduced zero downtime upgrades to reduce planned downtime for JIRA software and JIRA Service Desk. To address this pain in Confluence, we took a different approach. When we looked into the data, we know that around 80% of Confluence users are just consuming content rather than actually creating it. So we introduced read-only mode for Confluence. Here's how it works. An admin can turn on read-only mode through a maintenance screen. They can choose a banner message that lets their users know that the Confluence instance is currently undergoing some sort of maintenance. A few options will temporarily disappear from the instance, from pages, etc., such as the create space or the edit page. Sorry, I think I dropped one. As well as the like and the comment side of things. And so those 80% of the users that are consuming content can still function. They can still get the value out of their Confluence instance, while the admins can safely perform the maintenance they need within the instance. Let's talk a little bit about peak load. The shape of this chart should look familiar to many of you. This is the internal load of our Confluence instance over time of the day. You can see like a large spike in load happening late afternoons in the US, which is mornings for Sydney, as Sydney comes online. And as you can imagine, this could very much be the blood pressure of the workplace technology team who's responsible for managing this instance throughout the course of the day. This is really why we use data center internally with clustering to get consistent performance and experience even during those peak load times. But even with clustering at peak load, our largest customers can sometimes encounter challenges related to stability and performance. And so we've been looking at ways to make the clustering technology more resilient. One of those, we've done this in Confluence specifically, is by upgrading the underlying clustering technology that we use. It's called Hazelcast, and we've brought that up to the most recent version. This is for our internal influence of Confluence. After upgrading Hazelcast, we saw a 30% decrease in the amount of time it took the server to conduct operations. This meant the cluster had way more capacity for delivering consistent performance during peak load times. And going forward, we plan to keep that library up to date. So as Hazelcast improves their cluster resiliency and performance, you reap the benefits of that as well. For a few of our largest JIRA customers, we found that if one node in the cluster was in trouble for whatever reason, the other nodes in the cluster were unaware of this and they kept replicating to the troubled node, increasing their overall stress. So we've spent a lot of time and effort in JIRA, specifically in 8.0 and beyond, improving node resiliency. If one node gets into trouble, the cluster intelligently manages the load and continues to serve users. We've made it also fail-safe to restart a node without fear of corrupting your index. These are just a couple of examples of many more updates that we've made to improve the stability of our clusters. These updates are really important, but we hear from a lot of our customers that keeping up to date with that release cadence of all these new features and improvements and bug fixes can be quite challenging. This is why we introduced enterprise releases for JIRA Software, JIRA Service Desk, and Confluence. An enterprise release is a designated feature release that will get critical security and stability bug fixes throughout the supported window. There will be at least one enterprise release every year, so you can plan for that. And all of the clustering and stability improvements that I talked about have been made available in the latest enterprise release for Confluence and JIRA. We've already heard from you that you guys are seeing a positive change when you're on an enterprise release. In fact, for our large customers on an enterprise release, we see around 50% less critical support issues when compared to that of enterprise customers running on older releases. So if you're on an older release of JIRA or Confluence, please upgrade to the enterprise release. You'll get the most important stability fixes without the challenge of constantly needing to upgrade to the latest and greatest. As your deployments get larger and more complex, you've told us that having better visibility into how your instance is doing is of great need. And that's why we're investing more and more into diagnostics, so admins can get a quick overview of the important events within the system itself. In fact, we've already shipped this in Bitbucket 5.9 and Confluence, and we'll be shipping diagnostics to JIRA soon. Our goal is to expose events such as HTTP requests that are exceeding their time limits, long-running tasks, or when a node leaves or joins a cluster. You can also drill down into the event metadata to get to the root cause of the problem quicker. These alerts are also exposed via JMX so that you can integrate these into all of your application monitoring tools that you may already be using. This information really helps admins proactively address issues first that, if left unattended, could lead to more serious stability issues. In addition to performance instability, we know many of you have requested third-party SAML authentication, and we're excited to deliver this capability into Crowd Data Center. We're also working on additional improvements to Crowd to help you manage your product license usage and give you permission visibility across all of your Atlassian tools. There's a lot that goes into effectively running an instance at scale, more than just product capabilities and tools. Investing in data center guidance has been a significant area of focus for us. You'll see our improved data center documentation on our website, and we recently released a guide for all of you on how we monitor our internal data center instances at Atlassian, like JAP or Bitbucket. These documents get into our infrastructure, our monitoring strategy, how we ensure high performance and uptime for these services. We also provided updated documentation on hardware for deployment sizes. So you can go there and you can see, well, I have this many issues, I have this many custom fields, I should probably be running on this type of hardware. So you can size your instances better and get the performance that we expect. And really keep an eye out for a lot more document thought leadership you'll see us putting out around the DC space. Along with updating our documentation and guidance, we've also updated our AWS CloudFormation templates and their documentation. Our updated templates have a new architecture for deployment, and they're more extensible, so you can customize them to suit your organization's needs. And we really didn't stop with AWS. We've also made a bunch of improvements to our JIRA and Confluence templates for Azure. We know infrastructure choice is important for teams, for Atlassian admin teams. And we've also added Azure support for Bitbucket Data Center and JSD Data Center as well. So let's recap the 3 areas of investment that I covered in this session. Firstly, our foundation for success is making sure your teams are more productive. Across all the platform releases, your feedback really drives our improvements. Secondly, as your teams scale, admins can become a bottleneck. And we want to free up your admin teams of the overhead work by introducing capabilities like native archiving, custom field optimization, delegated group administration, etc., so that your admins can focus their precious time on their highest value initiatives for your teams. And finally, we're investing in supporting your infrastructure growth. Capabilities like read-only mode in Confluence, all the clustering improvements, enterprise releases, and DC-approved apps really head towards that direction. Just wanted to say a big thank you for having me at the K15t event, and happy to take some questions now if we have some time. How are we going? We take 1 or 2 questions. Sure.
Is there a roadmap of the enterprise release versions for each product?
The question was, is there a roadmap for the enterprise release versions? Are you saying about what we would include in those versions or when they will come out?
What will be the version for JIRA, for example, for this year?
Yeah, so I think we kind of pick a release, but we don't kind of publicly announce it until we actually know that this is going to be the enterprise release. And so I think you can,
for our planning.
it is important for your planning. I think you can guarantee that there'll be one at least every 12 months. We are actually delivering them more frequently than 12 months. I think you'll see one definitely after every .0 release within roughly the first 5 releases. And so we really just don't want to say like, oh, hey, this is going to be the enterprise release. And then when we look at the stability of the release, it's actually not up to scratch and we have to push it back because then we're giving you false information. But on the .0 release of the enterprise release, say it's 7.4 or 7.5, we'll say this is going to be the enterprise release. And we'll release a bunch more bug fix versions, and then we'll say this is the designated release. So we try and give more heads up on that. We have taken some feedback that maybe we could plan around that a little bit better. At the moment, we are only announcing what will be the designated enterprise release once we've determined that the quality is high enough to be the ER. But we'll look to kind of probably provide more feedback or earlier feedback on that in the future.
Another question?
There are lots of new features for the cloud product and for the data center product, but almost none for the server version.
So the question was, there's a lot of new features for the cloud version and for the DC version, but not a lot for the server version. The data center version and the server version are actually essentially the same product underneath. And so a lot of the features that we ship actually ship to both server and Confluence. I've focused very, very heavily on data center today. Because really, when you're an enterprise and your apps are mission critical, we think DC is the best choice for you. But there is probably equally long talk around the server products. For instance, all the performance improvements I talked about today, they go into server as well. So the board performance improvements, that's not something just for data center. Server products, request performance, index size improvements. There is a lot being shipped to server as well, but when we think about customers at scale, we really focus on a different set of features. But if there are a set of features that we think would be beneficial to server customers as well, we ship them to both.